are live. Welcome to another episode of Be Trapping Quick Talk. And today we're going to be talking about the Happy Land fire that shook the Bronx back in 1990. Julio Gonzalez entered the U.S. from Cuba in the 1980 Mariel boat lift. The 1980 Mariel boat lift happened after Fidel Castro allowed fellow Cubans to leave the island. Julio then traveled up to New York City where he settled for a new life. By 1984, Julio had a steady job at a lamp factory in Queens, New York, and had an apartment at West 183rd Street in the Bronx. That same year, he would fall in love with Lydia Feliciano, who occasionally worked at the Happy Land Social Club. 6 years later, Julio would lose this job packing boxes at a Queens lamp factory, and his girlfriend Lydia had broken up with him shortly after. Trying to survive in the mean streets of New York City, Julio started feeling the pressure on March 25, 1990. He was 2 weeks behind rent at the time. That same evening, Julio was seen hanging out drinking at the Happy Land Social Club, maybe on purpose so he could see his ex-girlfriend. But when Lydia noticed Julio, she wasn't very happy. Julio was then kicked out by the bouncer after an argument between him and Lydia got ugly. He was heard to scream drug and threats like, "I'll be back to shut this place down." Nobody thought nothing about it, but Julio stood around the area and plotted his next moves. Word on the street, Julio tried to get a gun, but nobody credible could confirm this. The Happy Land Social Club was ordered to close for code violations in November of 1988. Violations included no fire exits, alarms, and sprinkler systems. No follow-up by the fire department was documented. The social club was technically operating illegally, and so it had no sprinklers, and several of the building's exits had been blocked off to conceal the party inside. There were no windows and just one exit. That same exit was the entrance, located downstairs. Most of the back doors were locked or guarded for outsiders not to sneak in. Julio found an empty tin oil can nearby and filled it up with gasoline at a close-by gas station. At first, he ran into problems with the clerk at the station for not letting him fill up the can. But soon after, the clerk gave in and let Julio fill the can up with $1 worth of gas. Julio then walked back to the social club. Julio took advantage of the blocked exits and several violations committed by the club to start the fire. He spilled gasoline on the staircase in the hallway before igniting the gasoline with 2 matches. Julio just torched a nightclub on Southern Boulevard and West Farms after an argument with his former girlfriend Lydia with no regrets. Afterwards, he just watched the whole event across the street. He then walked to the number 40 bus and broke down in tears. His neighbor told police Julio came knocking on the door around 4 a.m. confessing he just killed Lydia. She didn't believe much of the story because he smelled like alcohol and gasoline for some reason, but now it makes sense. She knows the nightmare that he has committed. Around 3:41 a.m., within 3 minutes when firefighters first drove on the block, they had no idea of the magnitude of the fire. It was very quiet inside Happy Land. There was no screams. There was no sound at all. There was people in the street telling us there was loads of people inside trapped. Dennis Delvin, one of the first firefighters to arrive, said, "We couldn't hear anybody screaming. We didn't hear anybody yelling. There was no one hollering." The 150 firefighters who raced to the scene managed to extinguish the Happy Land fire in 5 minutes, but even that was too late. Firemen then began to climb the steps and up to the second floor. As they entered the darkened room, the floor felt strange under their feet. They tripped over piles of clothes and unknown bundles. But slowly, the horrible truth dawned upon them. They were walking and crawling on bodies. Everywhere the firemen aimed their flashlights, they saw bodies on bodies. Nearly all the victims, 61 men and 26 women, died due to smoke inhalation, though others were killed in the chaotic rush to the only door. 7 victims were from the same family. 6 were found trampled at the door, and many others were trapped inside, under tables, or behind a bar. At about 4 p.m. that same day, detectives went over to 31 Butcherman Place and knocked on the door of Julio Gonzalez's 3rd floor apartment. "¿Quién es?" a voice behind the door asked. "Policía, deseamos hablar contigo," replied detectives. "Sí," the voice replied. When Gonzalez opened the door, the detectives were immediately overwhelmed by the odor of gasoline. They asked him to come over to the police station to talk about the fire. Gonzalez didn't seem too upset at the time. Gonzalez put on his gasoline-soaked shoes and went with the detectives. Julio immediately began to confess. Police practically didn't have to ask him anything. He told police that he set the fire for revenge against Lydia Feliciano. He said that he was angry that she broke up with him and she wouldn't take him back. I don't know. It looks like something bad got into me. It looks like the devil got into me, Gonzalez said in his confession. The police had to break the news to him. 6 people in total survived the fire, and Lydia was one of them. Julio was speechless, confused. You could sense the regret in his eyes. On August 19th, 1991, Gonzalez was found guilty of 87 counts of second-degree murder, 87 counts of felony murder, 1 count of first-degree arson, and 1 count of assault. On December 19, 1991, he was sentenced to 4,350 years behind bars. No information about Lydia Feliciano is known today. As for Julio Gonzalez, on September 13th of 2016, he died of a heart attack.